The gospel this week is from John, chapter 18, verses 33 through 37. And this is a discussion, a conversation between Pilate and Jesus. And there's three sentences from the gospel that I want to point out. The first sentence is when Pilate says to Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And I think that same question is one that we ask. In our life, is he our king? They wanted to know that answer. They were waiting for a king back in Jesus's time, and they wanted to know, are you the king of the Jews? And we, today, so many years later, we're searching for something. We are wanting something. We're missing something, and we don't know what that is. We have that empty feeling sometimes. And back then, the king was right in front of them, and they put him on a cross and they crucified him. I'm really grateful to say that I'm not searching anymore. I'm not missing anything anymore. I'm not feeling like there's a void, that something's missing. Because if that question is asked to me, is he your king? The answer is absolutely. He is the ruler of my life. He is the one whom I live for. He is why I make the decisions that I make. He is why I practice my faith. He is why I serve those that need to be served. He is the reason why I try to be more patient, try to be more kind and loving and forgiving. He's my king. And that drives everything else. When he is your ruler, you don't have to wonder what your decision is going to be. You don't have to worry about how should I react. He tells you how. He painted the picture of how to allow him to be your ruler and how to live for him. And so there's a freedom in knowing, yeah, he's my king, and knowing what it means to live for him. And I find that in the scriptures. And so I do my best to try to live that out. The second part of it is where Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world. I think that's probably been the hardest part for me as a Christian. And I've said this before, being in the world, but not of the world. Thinking more, like I said last week, of that world, so I live differently in this world. I'm able to realize that what this world calls me to be, or calls me to do, the individualism that this world just shoots at us and pours on us, it isn't what he asks of us. He asks us not to be ours, not to be the world's, but to be his. And I think that's the biggest change, or maybe the hardest change to make when you decide to live for him, is realizing that, yeah, you live in this world, but you're not of this world. You need to be living for the next. And there's freedom in that. So many don't understand that, but there's such freedom in not letting this world take control of you and just being his. The last part of it, the last sentence that I love, is when he says, those that listen to the truth hear my voice. You know, my students always say, Mrs. D, do you hear from him? Does he talk to you? Does he speak to you? And I always say, I've never heard his voice, but he speaks to me on a daily basis. He speaks to me through his word. He speaks to me today through Father Dan at Mass. He speaks to me through other people. He speaks to me so often through the music that I listen to, through other Christians that are walking this walk with me. They're journeying with me. I know that there are tons of voices that are going to be calling out to me during this lifetime. But the voice of truth is his. And no matter how loud it can get, how chaotic it can get, how crazy confusing it can get, I need to realize that his is the voice that I want to listen to. His is the voice of truth. Why? Because I know that he's my king, and I want him to be the ruler of my life. because I'm in this world, but I'm not of it. I am his. There's a song that I listen to all the time with my students called The Voice of Truth by Casting Crowns. And the voice of truth tells me a different story. The voice of truth says, what says, do not be afraid. So my challenge for you this week is, don't be afraid to let him be your king. Try to figure out how to be in the world, but not of the world. Be his. And finally, try to drown out all of those other voices so you can listen to the voice of truth, especially during this crazy holiday busy season. He is the voice of truth. He is the King.